Welcome to the Love the Star podcast. I'm Bobby Bell, Dallas Cowboys insider for 105 through the Fan in Dallas, joined as always by former NFL scout Bryan. He is a Super Bowl winner. He is also the co-host of the G-Bag Nation, 2 to 7 p.m. Central, Monday through Friday on 105 through the Fan in Dallas. And he is the pre- and post-game co-host on the Dallas Cowboys radio network. Bryan, how's it going today?
Doing well, Robert. Happy Ravens week. Should we say Happy Ravens week?
Sure.
Probably not.
I don't know if that's a thing. I don't think of it as Ravens week. I mean,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
It is factually.
For,
the last time
for Edgar Allan Poe, it's always Ravens week, right?
Yeah, Hawk the Raven, nevermore. Now, the Ravens, the last time the Cowboys played the Ravens, do you remember that game?
Okay. It was it during COVID?
It was.
And it was the game that Des Bryant was supposed to dress, and he got COVID, and he got tested before the game and got COVID and couldn't play in the game.
Yep.
So it was like a Thursday night game, was it?
No, it was actually, I believe it ended up being a Wednesday night.
Oh, because
you remember that the Ravens
COVID.
didn't have any players and they kept having to get things delayed.
Yeah, okay.
And so that was also the game where the Ravens rushed for about 300 yards on the Cowboys.
Sure they
in that
did.
Game. So I bring that up just to say, now that you've gotten a chance to take a look at the Ravens this week, they come in here with Lamar Jackson. They come in here with Derrick Henry and a lot of different personnel packages where they are going to just line it up and try and run it down your throat at a lot of different points. Will the Ravens push that 300-yard number again this week against the Cowboys?
You sound like you think they are.
I think they might. Let
me ask you this, Bob.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this though. Do you feel like that's what Todd Monken is going to do? Sometimes you get these coaches that think they're so smart, and they're like, you know what, we should run the ball here, but I'm going to throw it 50 times and see what happens, kind of a deal. I wonder if Todd Monken is going to get in that 12 personnel, that 21 personnel, the 22 personnel, and do exactly what the Saints did. Yeah,
I mean, you've got Monken as a guy who it's odd. The last 3 games, the playoff game against Kansas City, the regular season opener, the game against the Raiders, they've had Lamar Jackson throw the ball a lot. He's thrown the ball, I think it's close to 40 times a game in those 3 games there. And so they haven't necessarily leaned into the run game the same sort of way as we've become accustomed to with them. But, man, they still have, I think, the ability to run the ball on in a big way. And not only that, I think it's going to look incredibly inviting what they turned on the tape and see what New Orleans was able to do against them. Now, New Orleans able to have a lot of success on the edges and, doing some different things there. I think that Baltimore can line this up, run this between the tackles, and make it very difficult on Dallas this week.
I don't think you're wrong. How about this? Would you challenge them with the heaviest box you can go with and dare them to throw it? And I know our guy, Clark on ESPN,
Ryan Clark.
Ryan Clark, my LSU guy. I think that Ryan, I've been saying that for the last couple of days. I know I do some work with Fox Lombardi and stuff like that. And we've been talking, and even on DallasCowboys.com, Nick Harris, myself, Amber, and Derek were talking about, do you just try and play as heavy box as you can and say, and I'm going to be honest with you, Zay Flowers is a damn good receiver. If it turned
Zay Flowers and Isaiah Likely are both really good players.
If you turned into throwing the ball in this game, they it's just a matter of how accurate can this quarterback be throwing the ball. Is he going to make a mistake, or is he going to be accurate? And I said this about the player, the guy that when he drops back, he flicks that wrist and there goes the ball. He's not a natural thrower of the football, but he's just got that ability to flick the wrist and it kind of goes where it needs to go, but he's not always accurate. I would consider playing as many people in the box and just dare them to throw. And on the flip side of that, the Ravens should play as much dime package as they can in this football game and dare you to run it, because their run defense is legit. Okay, they're running their front seven to face the run is legit, and their pass defense has had problems. The secondary has had some problems, but if you're looking at Dallas's path to victory, it's probably going to come from the defensive side of the ball. They're going to have to if Baltimore wants to get in 12 personnel or play with a fullback and all those things too, they probably can run the ball. You have to be up to the challenge. This is another week of, it just reminds me so much of when early 2000s when I was working for the team and we gave up 3 straight 200-yard rushers one time. It's just hard. It was hard to play run defense no matter what we did. It didn't work. Your personnel. I mean, I think they got much better personnel now on defense than we had in the early 2000s. But man, if somebody wants to load up and run the ball, I'm going to ask you this question, Bobby.
Mm-hmm.
And I've asked this to a lot of different people on a lot of different platforms. So if it's some cross going on, I apologize to folks who listen to all our platforms. Is this team's built to play 11 personnel teams and not 12 personnel teams or 21 personnel teams or 22 personnel teams. It's built defensively to play against multiple wide receivers and not big personnel. Is that true or is that a false statement?
Yeah, because I mean, I think they told you that with the packages that they ran out there. The fact that they think DeMarvion Overshown belongs in the nickel package and not the base package kind of tells you like that's a different personnel look that they like to come with. And so that's going to be obviously a bigger jumbo package where, Overshown wouldn't be in there when you're going against base. And so I think that, yeah, it's definitely a team that when you get physical and you get big and you try and turn it into a more, physical, tough, violent
fist fight game.
Football, yeah, then it's one that Dallas is not going to be as equipped to play. Dallas has several problems on defense right now. The interior of that defensive line is just not very good. I don't. You're looking for bodies. You're going Carlos Watkins again. There's obviously the whole controversy surrounding Jordan Phillips right now. There's Linval Joseph, who was not good in this last game against the Saints. And so I think that, you got the Mozzie Smith back issue. The problems with the interior of the defensive line are so sincere right now and then cause problems in, the second level
areas.
Defense with the linebackers.
Yeah.
It's just everything right now is so sensitive to big personnel packages and the way that you're able to take advantage of that. So I don't disagree with that because if you spread things out and say, hey, we're going to try and just play things a little bit more open and 11 personnel and a vertical tight end and do some different things like that. Like, I feel like Dallas was like, okay, well, pin our ears back and rush. We can do that with our edge rushers. And we feel good about our corners. And Kalen Carson, is somebody who is obviously a younger player who's still coming along and trying to find his way a little bit, but I think is definitely going to be more comfortable in just, here you are lined up in nickel and, trying to make plays in coverage rather than having to play a little more physical game or some stuff with some movement and some jet motion. The amount of movement, the pre-snap motion that the Saints were using and those various things like that with the size of it. Go back and look at I think it's the first run of the game. Was that the jet sweep to
Shaheed? It was a jet sweep to Shaheed. Yeah.
Jet sweep to Shaheed. And just go look at the blocking concepts on that where
Dallas tried to run the same play.
And
with Taysom Hill and they brought him back and circled him back for the block Dallas tried to do the same thing and it went for -3.
Yeah, it looks like what it looks like at first is like it looks like they're running. It looked almost like they were running like counter tray with like jet motion, and then they actually just hand off the jet motion and go that. And Hill does the reverse back around, and that kind of physical, tough, like line up and punch you in the mouth style of blocking and style of offense is something that the Cowboys are going to have a lot of problems with. Carlos Watkins coming back here, what do you think about his ability to fit in and maybe remedy some of that? Not that Carlos Watkins is a big-time difference maker, but I feel like at least the Carlos Watkins I saw here in Dallas for 2 years, and the guy who started the year for Arizona last year before he got hurt, was not a guy I felt like was just going to get blown off the ball like Jordan Phillips has been.
Yeah. The thing, I mean, and I've apologized on a lot of different platforms for my take on Jordan Phillips. In talking to people, they're saying, there's a lot going on there. You threw it out there. There is a lot going on with Jordan Phillips, and depending on who you talk to, the thought of the wrist surgery hasn't fully healed. He wasn't using his hand, in getting off blocks. It's something that they were going to look into, and this is going to give him an opportunity to do that. Now, that's one side of the story, but you wonder from the player's side of things, and I don't know, Bobby. I mean, I'm sure you've heard some things, I've heard some things going forward about this, and that some of it's kind of like, whoa, okay. But that's, really don't want to get into that right now.
Yeah, but I think there's a lot of sensitivity surrounding
the
Jordan Phillips stuff right now.
Yeah, there's a lot. And, hey, I don't want to put something out there that's, I'm hearing a lot of things. So
I'll tell you this. Jordan Phillips was very unhappy in the locker room the other day.
Yeah.
And I think the Cowboys are not particularly happy with him. And so I think that there's a lot of mutual frustration, and some of that frustration is compounded by the fact that you just had him active for the second game, which finalized the trade with the Giants. And you now that trade of the 6th round pick, the pick swap there, that's set in stone now because he was active for 2 games. And so I think part of it also is like, well, we if we would have had a better feeling maybe a week earlier, then we don't even need that swap either. And now it's something that becomes finalized.
Well, I think what you're saying is absolutely right. I don't know how happy he is with you, and I don't know how happy they are with him. So there's somewhere in between, And but what I was told is the wrist surgery stuff, and that's something they're checking into. That's what we know right now. Watkins, could he help? They've, this seems to me it's like continually pushing the boulder up the hill. Mozzie Smith with tight back, and it's just it never ceases to amaze me when people will say this. They'll go, well, they really haven't committed to doing anything at the defensive tackle spot. Yeah, they did. They committed to Mozzie Smith.
It was a first-round pick.
It was a first-round pick. They did not try to ignore the position. They tried to draft a guy in the first round, and it hasn't worked out. They were looking at a 329-pound defensive tackle that was playing at a very high level for Michigan. That's who they drafted. That guy has not been here. That has not been here at all. And back tightness. I mean, I was watching the game the other day. I noticed a couple of times that he was kind of flinching, looked like he was in hell. Everybody looked like they were in pain. I was in pain watching him run the ball down your throat. I think we all were, but here we are, this defensive tackle, they're like, well, they never address it. No, they addressed it. They addressed it with the wrong guy. It appears the wrong guy is on this team. Now, they tried to do things in August. I brought up the Phillips thing to people. I watched him. I'm sure I watched the same tape that Alex Loomis watched in the pro department.
Sure.
Watched Kansas City, watched Philadelphia, watched the Cowboys. Phillips had a really good game against the Cowboys. He played well against the Cowboys. And so now you're kind of looking at it like, well, okay. As a matter of fact, they put him in like a 5 technique and on a twist stunt had a sack. This guy who's playing right now is not the same player. I don't even recognize the guy here that's playing right now. and I'm not trying to do that to wash my hands of this and all that, but I guarantee you they saw the same tape I did. You know, and I'm now in the media. I've been now in the media for 15 years, you know, but I still know I still have an understanding what I'm looking at. You know, they have tried to address it various ways. It hasn't worked. It hasn't worked.
They missed. It looks right now. You don't want to write anybody off, but it looks right now that they just missed. And
missed.
You know what? That happens. And before we just, you know what? Let's hold that thought. I'll come back around to it. First, I got to say, you're listening to the Love the Star podcast. The Love the Stars and Odyssey podcast. You can find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Brian, to the idea of missing on Mazi Smith. And that's something that the Cowboys personnel department, if they have indeed missed on him, and he's still got time to turn it around, I suppose. But that's something that they'll have to wear, is that they missed on the evaluation of the player. But I'll say this, is that it is math that you are going to have misses. Like it's just mathematically impossible. It's just impossible to say you're going to hit on every single pick. And so what I'll say is, did they miss? Yes. But where I put the majority of this blame is, this is also what happens when you tell your scouting department every year, go save us. Go. That's a good point. Just, pull a rabbit out of the hat, and every single year get us 7 starters with 7 picks or 7 contributors with 7 picks. One of these days you're going to have a miss, or you're going to have a couple misses in the draft, because it's just, statistically likely that you will hit those every now and then. And they've hit it with Mazi Smith, and they ended up banking on the wrong guy, it feels like.
Bobby, I was listening to you on my walk, I think yesterday, and you were asked a question about this defensive tackle group, Mazi Smith, Tristan Hill. Big misses, though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. You still have time with Mazi, but it's, the fact that, back tightness.
It would be a surprise if he
ends up to be a really good player.
The player they thought he was going to be. It would be a surprise absolutely. At this point.
Is it something with the position? Is it the evaluation of the position? Or is it the fact that you went from a Rod Marinelli regime to a Dan Quinn regime to a Mike Zimmer regime? Is that the issue with the problem with the defensive tackles?
So I view Hill and Mazi as a little different. So in terms of, I think they've had some of the same issues that he, I don't
know if they've necessarily drafted guys that like football. That's very hard. That's very harsh for me to say. I'm saying that and I'm sure somebody will text me and MF me for saying that, and I don't care. But they do draft a lot of guys that do love football. That quarterback loves football. I mean, I know he's paid well to love football, but he loves football. There's guys on this roster that love football. I question whether a Tristan Hill or a Mazi Smith really love football.
Yeah, I don't think I think Tristan Hill did not like working. I think Tristan Hill had an awful workout.
He and I share a common theme then.
when you talk to people, I remember I texted 2 different people the night they picked Tristan Hill. Yeah. And I said, what are your thoughts on him? Oh, I love Tristan. He's, people who knew him and had, worked with him before. And I just said, they left a little window there. And I was like, so wait, everything's good? You like it? And they're like, well, sometimes maybe he doesn't love practicing. Yeah, sometimes he just doesn't want to work very much. Like, okay, well that's concerning when they're saying that all the way back to, the time period where you're supposed to be getting ready, and it's not those challenges yet. I think the criticisms of Tristan Hill existed coming out of college. Mazi has had some issues that I don't think were consistent with the evaluation that you heard coming out of Michigan. Right. People talked about Mazi coming out of Michigan. We all felt like, I think, immediately Mazi Smith is an average to above average run defender in the NFL. Like, I think we thought just baseline that was going to be a slam dunk. We'll see if he can develop more. And
the tape showed he could play. The tape showed he could play.
Yeah, whereas Hill, a lot of Hill was traits and how much can you light a fire and get it out of him. He had fallen out of favor with Josh Heupel at UCF, and that staff didn't like him anymore. And he had a really tough final season at UCF, where he had kind of declined from his sophomore year, I think it was. Mozzie was not that way. Mozzie was somebody who had kind of shown progression, and you felt like, ooh, there's more he can tap into here. But at the very minimum, I know I'm getting somebody who can impact the run game. I know I'm getting that. That's not going to be a struggle. Then he gets here, and it's a struggle. And it's a struggle to just even keep weight on. And so the Mozzie one is a little puzzling. Cowboys absolutely will have to wear that and say, look, we missed. If again, like we said, we don't want to condemn anybody as like this is who they're going to be, but like we said, it's a surprise at this point if Mozzie becomes a good player, I think, because he's kind of just is what he is. Bryan, I was looking at these numbers from NFL Pro, the new like next gen stats tie-in with the NFL Game Pass, the NFL Plus that comes with it. There are only 5 players in the NFL right now with enough qualifying snaps who have a slower get-off time than Mozzie Smith this year. Would it surprise you to learn that one of those people who has a slower get-off time is Linval Joseph?
Yeah.
I mean, that's where things are at right now with that defensive tackle group, and it's incredibly disappointing. And I think we talked about it at the time. There was a concern. It was concerning to see that they added like 12 veterans in 14 days during August, and a lot of it was defensive linemen that they were mixing and matching. And I remember we asked the question there of like, does this signal panic, or is it opportunity, or what are we looking at here? And I think what you're finding is they got into training camp, saw some serious deficiencies along their roster, and they're trying to address it, and they're having trouble addressing it.
I agree.
And I think that there's not a Jonathan Hankins trade out there for them right now, or that kind of move hasn't panned out for them yet. Joseph hasn't been good. Phillips hasn't been good. Watkins, we'll see. But he's not going to be like, I don't believe, even though I think he can be solid and he's not going to get blown off the ball necessarily, he's not going to be a game changer in all likelihood. He's just going to be, he might be able to give you some solid snaps. Bryan, I don't know who are they getting snaps out of at one technique this week against Baltimore if Mozzie Smith isn't playing either?
Well, that's a good question. They're going to have to bring somebody up off the
Daxon or Hoskins, one of those.
Yeah, I would say that would be, if Mozzie doesn't play, how quickly do you get Carlos Watkins ready to play? You know? I mean, that's where it's going to come down to. They're going to have to make an elevation there, I believe.
Do you have a preference on Hoskins or Daxon, or would you just say, no, just get me somebody in here who's going to give me snaps?
I need to watch Hoskins play is what I need to do. But I'm afraid to do that because every time I talk about these one techniques, they're all busts.
Imagine
how
Mike Zimmer.
At one time in my life, I felt like I could evaluate these guys, but I guess I can't.
No, and I think it's important to you were not wrong or duped on Jordan Phillips. Jordan Phillips had good tape in that game. He had good tape.
Oh, he had good tape. It's just he played. I don't recognize the player now. If I was in the pro department and I sat down and they asked me to watch tape and give me a report on Phillips, it would have been a positive report. I would have said, well, we need to go back and watch the Dallas game and I'll show you. I would have pulled clips and been able to make it, But right now, if I was sitting in that pro department and I made that recommendation, I'd feel like crap. I would feel like crap that I didn't help my football team. They brought in a guy. I brought in a guy that I thought could give us some meaningful snaps at the 3 technique. That's the question now you have to ask yourself. What happens at the backup 3 for Osa? Is that Golston gets to jump back inside a little bit, or what do you think is going to happen there?
Yeah, I mean, Golston snaps, Nealand. How are they attempting to? They're in a really rough spot. They're running out of bodies. Like forget just quality. They're running out of just active available bodies there. And Osa even said it this week in the locker room. He had a bad game against New Orleans, and I think Osa said that was the worst things he's put on tape in his career, that he thought he was really, really bad in this one. And they all got worked, defensively. And I'm going to give you a number, Brian, for this weekend against Baltimore. Given what we know, with the way that Baltimore has the ability to do different things, the way the running game has had success across the NFL in the first 2 weeks, my favorite stat so far this year, Brian, is that we've had 6, I believe it is. There's been 6 games of at least 215 rushing yards in the NFL, and we've had 4 games of 300 net passing yards. So the run game's making a little bit of a comeback. But given what we know about Baltimore, the struggles Dallas has, what the Cowboys have put on tape, what the Cowboys look like they have in personnel, over under 180 yards rushing for the Ravens this weekend. And that's a team right now that I think is averaging like 170 through the first 2 weeks.
Yeah. And your hope is as a Cowboy fan would be that the Ravens pass defense continues not to show up.
Yeah, give me some thought on that, because the Ravens have players in the secondary. These are not bad
pressures,
football players and
pressures.
Yeah,
it's pressures. They're down. Their pressure numbers are down. And it's funny when you brought up the metric of get off the ball. Mm-hmm. The Ravens have had some players. They've had some players that have Madubuike, the defensive tackle.
Yeah.
He's had some slow get off times. Doesn't have the pressures he's had the last few years. This is another team that I think they've had 4 pressures on 14 blitzes this year. This is a team that normally creates like 50% of the time they get pressures on their blitzes. They lost a lot. They lost their coordinator. They lost a couple of coaches, defensively. A couple of their coaches got gigs. I think one's at Tennessee and another guy got a job somewhere else. They've lost some coaches, 3 of them, 3 pretty prominent coaches.
Yeah.
Marlon Humphrey, all-pro player. They're
Does
playing
not
him
look
playing in the slot a little bit more. He's giving up some plays in the slot. I think they got 11 catches on the guy. Got a couple of touchdowns on him already.
This is
one touchdown all year last year.
This was a note from NFL Pro, was that they were talking about where CeeDee Lamb's in the slot. The Ravens defense has allowed a 68% success rate in the slot this year. And the only team that's worse in the NFL this year is the Commanders so far.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing about it is now you're not going to run the ball on these guys.
I think it's 2.7 yards per carry.
It just
or something
doesn't happen.
Now.
And it's sometimes you're not going to run the ball on me because I'm so bad playing the pass. You're not going to run the ball on me. And if you have to throw, maybe you have a chance. But Travis Jones, it's a big body guy. Michael Pierce, big body guy. Michael Pierce, 350-pound guy.
Yeah.
They got guys that when you watch them play the run, that they leverage and then get rid of the guy and make the play. They have legitimate, it ain't fight, block, ball goes by. It is, they stick you at the point of attack, get rid of you, and then go make the play. But, they've got length at the edge. Van Noy, I know he didn't practice yesterday. Owe, they've got guys with length.
Is Owe your biggest concern?
That's my biggest
from a pass protection standpoint.
Yeah. Madubuike, I think if you look at, he hasn't had the pressure, but that's a defensive tackle. Okay. I feel like that either Zach Martin has had his moments where he's been mortal,
Yeah. Zach Martin than we're used to.
Yeah. Okay. So could be a really good matchup there. Tyler Smith, that's a good matchup that, Dallas can win that. I feel like that Cooper Beebe's been one of your top 2 offensive linemen this year when it comes to consistency. There's been some times where he has maybe struggle a little in the running game. But when you look at the pass protections and the things like that, the calls, the snaps, I think he's been pretty darn consistent. They got to find a way to control the middle, but don't let him be the difference maker. Him, Van Noy, they've got some guys, but it ain't like you're dealing with some of the guys that you've dealt with the last couple of weeks.
No, absolutely. I'll say this: I'm concerned about I think one of Oweh's best strengths is neutralizing like the punch, the hand usage, the placement from opposing tackles a lot of times. Yeah. And that's exactly the kind of stuff that Guyton has been struggling with, has been his hands. So if you get Oweh across from him, I kind of worry about that matchup in particular.
Yeah, he took Colton Miller to task last week against the Raiders.
I think it was the very first snap. He just
very first snap of the game. Yeah, very first snap of the game. So, I would worry about the length on the edge. I'd worry about the power inside. Running the football, it's difficult because of Roquan Smith. It's kind of like dealing with Koromora with Cleveland in Week 1. It's that kind of guy. It's you're talking a little bit of a shorter but really active sideline to sideline guy, plays downhill. I tell you, Kansas City did a pretty good job of getting him in some pass coverage stuff and took advantage of it. They took Rice on they spread out and made the linebackers from the Ravens have to cover. And you get Rice in the slot, and he kind of runs like a pivot route or return where he goes out, then comes back in. And Roquan Smith was chasing, a big play. They've given up. I mean, these safeties have given up some big plays to tight ends. Yeah. Does that get Jake Ferguson back in the mix? John Stevens, does maybe John Stevens get in the mix? We saw a little positivity from Luke Schoonmaker last week. If give me a shot with Ferguson, give me a shot with Ferguson, a little run after catch. We'll give them a little of their own medicine. That's what the Ravens want to do with you. They want to take Isaiah Likely and throw the ball to him short and then let him run. So give them a little of that medicine. If you give me a little Jake Ferguson at 10 yards a shot catching the football, little run after catch, I think that's the way to do things. But this crew, Kyle Hamilton. I mean, I'm watching the tape of Kyle Hamilton. He's playing right at near the line of scrimmage. He's playing that role almost like what we saw with Bell and Curse and those guys. Yeah. Playing that extra, like that dime linebacker is what he's playing. He's playing dime linebacker. He's playing in the slot. He's playing safety. He's kind of a key to their defense.
Oh, and he's been so good against the run early. And he's struggled a ton in coverage. Yeah. I mean, if you can get Kyle Hamilton in coverage in this game, that might be something that if you're able to take advantage of that, you got something.
I don't know if I necessarily want to sit there and say, I'm going to take my chances attacking Marlon Humphrey. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I necessarily want to do that. I'll challenge him. I'll challenge him, but if I'm going to challenge a guy, Brandon Stevens or Nate Wiggins, that rookie Nate Wiggins, when he gets in the game, I'll challenge those guys. But I don't mind challenging Brandon Stevens. I really don't. I think that would be a good matchup for Dallas. I really do. If Dallas can get him the ball, I don't know if they'll get him the ball,
My concern is just the idea of I think Baltimore's got really good players in the secondary. I don't think they've played well so far.
They haven't. They haven't.
And so again, I don't think it's an issue of, these are just, they've got a poor secondary. They've played poorly,
they're good. They've been bad. Yeah.
Those are guys that I think it's going to click for them. They're not going to spend the whole season playing like they've played. Yeah. Delay it one more week. Give me one more week of struggles that they're still trying to figure things out with Zach Orr. Yeah. And maybe this is the function of new young coordinator that you're working with. I agree. And trying to figure some stuff out. Give me one more week and try to take advantage of some things in the passing game. If there are struggles, tell you what, you cannot have the same sort of issue of you get across the 40 and you just start stalling out. They've got to be able to take advantage of stuff in the passing game. They've got to be able to get more creative in the red zone.
Red zone. They're one of the worst red zone teams in the league.
Yeah,
Them
finish things off.
they're one of the worst. Yeah.
And look, I mean, make sure that you and CeeDee Lamb are clicking, and that Lamb is that you guys have things in sync, and that you're able to take advantage of some different things. I think there's some growing frustration about the idea of like, let's try to get some stuff going for Brandon Cooks. Let's try to get some stuff going over here for yeah.
Why? Okay. Why? We're just a couple of guys with microphones, as my buddy Voch Lombardi would like to say. We're just a couple, but why is Cowboy Nation talking about the same thing? You just wonder, not that there's a lot of times Cooks is open. There's hey, I'll tell you what, the Saints did a good job of not giving you much separation last week.
No,
their secondary played well. Their secondary played well, but still, I mean, there's some matchups here that I'll take my chances with. I don't want to mess with Marlon Humphrey a lot, but you know what? He looks, you say it again, he looks mortal. He looks mortal out there, especially playing in the slot. He looks mortal.
Dak has the second most tight window throw attempts in the NFL. This is second highest tight window throw percentage. There's not been necessarily a ton of easy windows to throw to.
No, if you want to play the metrics game, I looked this up because I saw it on tape. Teams are 13 for 13 on play action passes against the secondary. 13 for 13. You know what Dak was against the Saints last week on play action pass?
Give me the number.
6 for 6 and a touchdown. Maybe here's something, maybe all of a sudden it turns into play under center, but play action pass, I mean, sometimes play action pass, I always say, it's married to the run. Sometimes you're just not even good at running the ball, but you can play action and still affect people the way that is. But maybe that's something that you can look at going into this game and think, well, damn, play action game, here we come. Dak 6 for 6 last week, and the Ravens the only team in the league that has given up a completion on every single play action attempt. And it's not a small sample size, 13 for 13.
Dak is 22nd in the NFL in play action pass percentage in terms of the number of his attempts that come from play action passing.
This might change this week if that's the case.
I would hope so. You are listening to the Love the Star podcast. Love the Stars and Odyssey podcast. You can find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Bryan, we got a little bit of time here, so let's fit in a few questions from our Dean Julia Love of the Star mailbag, where we get the thoughts, comments, questions of our dear sweet listeners. And man, there is some sadness in these questions today. Let's go first one here from let's go to Mitch first. And Mitch says Washington is sitting on some well-paid big defensive tackles. Jonathan Allen in particular seems like he's perpetually unhappy there. Given Washington likely wanting some draft capital and that they've already shown they aren't afraid to deal in the division, can he be the answer to our DT woes? How much would you, given the state of your defensive tackles and how win now everything is, how much would you be comfortable giving up for a guy like Jonathan Allen?
There's surely, what's his contract, by the way? Is it going to just?
He's paid pretty well.
Is he paid like is he in that $20 million range?
I need to look. Let me see here.
Okay,
Jonathan Allen signed a 4-year, $72 million contract extension, so $18 million a year.
Yeah,
it's a lot of money.
Yeah. Do you think that Jonathan Allen's the only thing that could solve your run defense? It would surely help. It would surely help
that much. You know what? You know who could have helped your run defense probably a little would have been Jonathan Hankins.
Oh, sure.
There's some guys they let walk out the door this year.
I tell you, I watched Ridgeway take snaps for the Saints last week too. I would be willing. The problem you're running into is, where do you think this team finishes overall in the standings as far as record wise? Is it a 10-7 team?
This Cowboys team?
Yeah.
I think I said at the beginning of the year, and I haven't seen anything to dissuade me. I think they're 8-9.
Okay. So that means if you trade for this guy, you're probably going to have to give up a first-round pick, right?
I think he's worthy of that as in terms of the quality of player he is. I wonder if just because of the value of defensive tackles and things that maybe you could get away with a second.
Oh yeah, you want to get cheap now when we can't stop the damn run. That's
no,
smart.
but I'm just saying. I wonder if the league would tell you the determining like.
No,
the,
you're right.
The
I'm just.
Yeah, no, I get it. But I mean, you know what? They may. You would give up
a first round pick if you said you could stop the run. You'd absolutely do that.
Yeah. If
the
I
problem is like.
Problems.
Yeah, the problem is like, and I don't know this because I don't start the draft until December 1st. But do you want to draft it? Do you want to try and draft another guy, or do you want to go ahead and give up that one? If you're telling me that we're 8 and 9, if we trade for this guy and we're 8 and 9, and we're giving up probably the 14th or 15th pick, maybe is that kind of
right around there? I would guess, yeah. That's kind of the area that you'd be talking about.
I think you'd be hard pressed to find 14 football players better than him.
Yeah.
So I would sure consider it, but I would try. Yeah. Could you get them to take a second round pick? That would be it'd be very much like when the San Francisco 49ers packaged a bunch of picks together and went and got Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
That's kind of
who's been a massive difference maker for them.
That's probably what you'd have to do. You'd have to think of being very creative. Maybe you can give them the one and say that's it, or you can take the two and some other stuff and try and navigate it that way. But I would say that, as bad as you need a defensive tackle, this guy right here could solve a lot of problems, and it might be worth it for you. We've seen guys before, Brinson Buckner and people like that, but Colts gave up, I think it was in the 20s.
DeForest Buckner.
Did I say what did I say?
You said Brenston.
Oh, I mean that's way back in the day.
Brenston's that's an old name. He's a defensive line coach now.
Yeah, DeForest Buckner, but defensive tackle way back in the day.
Brenston Buckner wasn't a bad player.
He was a really good player. I'm sorry about that. DeForest Buckner. Yeah, God, that was way back in the day. But yeah, that's
I think Brenston Buckner is actually coaching for your old buddy Doug Peterson now. I think that's where he is. I think he's in Jacksonville.
He was a good player back in the day.
Yeah,
but anyway, but that's what our guy up in at the Colts basically gave up a middle of the board first round pick to go get this guy. So you might have to do the same. This might be your Amari Cooper move of several years ago.
Yeah, or do you start looking for your Amari Cooper move from that Raiders perspective? Do you get to 2 and 5 and do you start saying, you know what? Let's start figuring out pieces that we don't think are going to be here long term, and we know already that we're locked in with Dak and CD and some other guys. Let's start building around that.
Yeah,
and so it may be
you get this thing starts to really unravel on you.
We talked to Tyrone Crawford on Cowboys Crosstalk, and he obviously had played under Jason Garrett's last year here, where everything was really kind of like every loss was like, oh my gosh, is that going to be the one that ends Garrett, because he was in that lame duck year. McCarthy's in a similar point, and I just had asked Tyrone, like, hey, what do you guys feel the weight of that when you lose games? Like, do you feel the weight of, man, this has got a big impact on his job right now? And he said you definitely noticed the energy change in the building that week.
Yeah.
And how he said, the coaches maybe get a little more tense and uptight and are frustrated, and you feel for them. Like, you feel like, man, maybe my security may be good. I'm under contract. I'm okay. But man, I feel for my coach right here, and they clearly are feeling the pressure of it. And it's not going to take long. If you get worked over in the run game again this week and you have a lot of trouble and you lose another home game to Baltimore, it can get loud really fast here, because you've got Giants on a short week, road travel. Not that the Giants are great, but it is short week. It's travel. That's difficulty right there. Pittsburgh on the road after that, not going to be easy. Then Detroit. Then you got to sit on a bye week and roll into a primetime game in San Francisco. These first 7 weeks could get ugly fast. Yeah. Not that they will, but I mean, you maybe come out on the other side of this and we feel like, hey, this team is in a better position than we thought, but it could get troubling for them pretty quickly.
Sure could. Yeah.
Next question here from Daryl. What's the deal with Carl Lawson? Do you guys see him getting some play anytime soon? I think that Carl Lawson is behind where they hoped he was when they brought him in for work. They signed him. They needed depth, but I don't think that they feel particularly like, hey, that guy's going to be a solution for some of our problems.
Yeah, I was visiting with Brad Sham about that yesterday. We were kind of going back and forth if we've heard anything of how he's working out or anything like that. And there was some whispers that maybe this might be an elevation week. I think with so much going on with the defensive tackle spot, I would think that's hard to do. But there was some thought that maybe that Carl Lawson was maybe sooner than later. That's just this week, Bobby. It's whispering. It might not be.
You felt like Lawson was better against the run than he was in the past.
I did. I felt like last year watching the Jet tape, he was much better against the run than he was the pass. So that might be something they surely consider if you go back and watch that Jets tape.
And then let's wrap up here with this question from T. How do we feel after 2 weeks on Tyler Guyton, the good, the bad, and the ugly? I think about what I expected. There's some growing pains. There's some stuff. I think you absolutely see he's going to be a good player. I think that the evidence is there that he's going to be a good player. I think he'll eventually be probably a Pro Bowl tackle down the line. It's just not going to be right now. And there's some natural struggles there. Not completely overwhelmed, but the stuff that you would expect for a rookie tackle.
Hands are getting better. That was a problem week one. His hands are getting better. You're seeing him start to become more inside. The pressures aren't sacks, they're pressures, but he continues to fight. I think he's working on his technique. As I mentioned, the hands are getting better. The feet are getting a little bit better. He's going to find a way to put it all together here. And, that's, him, playing the position really for the first time. He was a right tackle, getting thrown into the, he was drafted in the first round, and, for him to play in the first couple of games, yeah, there's clearly some growing pains there, but I've noticed that the hands have gone from being a big concern to like, okay, they're getting better. And if his hands and his feet work together, the guy's got the toughness, he's got the strength. He could be a fine tackle for you, to this year and then even better in years to come.
Do you feel like he's further along, about the same, or a little behind where Tyler Smith was 2 weeks into his rookie year?
I kind of feel like he's a little bit behind.
And not in a bad way.
Not in a bad way, but I feel like Tyler Smith, there weren't the pressures, and I don't remember just the hang on to your ass moments with Tyler Smith. I kind of felt like that he was on point in a lot of his techniques and stuff. I think this guy's learning, but I think he's making improvement though, and every time he gets a rep.
That does it for us here today on the Love the Star podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a tough game they have coming up this weekend, and a chance though. On the flip side of that, for as tough as this game could be, if you can bounce back, respond, and control things on the run defense side, that would be a big boost to, I think, the confidence and the outlook on the season. I don't know about you, Brian. If they're able to get some control in this run game on the defensive side and hold Baltimore to a reasonable number, win this game, my outlook, I think, changes a lot for what the Cowboys can potentially do this season. As troubling as it might be, there's a lot of optimism you can take out of this if they perform the right way and respond the right way from the Saints game.
Yeah, get ready for a track meet then, Bob. Everything we're thinking, get ready for a track meet for sure.
There you go. We'll get that 51-48 Broncos-Cowboys game from a couple of years ago.
Exactly, yeah.
All right, for Brian Broaddus, I'm Bobby Bell. We'll talk to you guys again later. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest updates. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.